In the royal palace of the Zelari Empire, a world of shining towers and glowing skies, silence filled the grand hall. Thousands of nobles stood in shock as the alien princess, Liara, rose from her crystal throne, her eyes glowing like twin suns, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Bring me a human," she declared, "a true human male." From the lost world once called Earth, whispers broke out instantly, nobles turning to each other in disbelief. Humans were only legends, ghosts of a species wiped from memory after the great collapse centuries ago. No one had seen one. No one even believed they existed anymore. But the princess's decree was not a rumor, it was law. Her advisors trembled as they stepped forward. "Your Highness," one said, his skin flickering blue with fear, "why summon a creature that belongs to myth?" Liara looked toward the vast holographic map of dying star systems beyond their world. "Because our blood is fading," she whispered. "Our people cannot survive another generation, and our future demands what only humans once carried: balance."
Heart and renewal. The entire empire froze.
Her words spreading across the galaxy in moments, transmitted through the Interstellar Council's channels, across outposts and colonies. Every Zelari heard the impossible command and find a human. Far away, in the cold edge of a forgotten sector, a small cargo ship drifted between dying asteroids, its hull scarred and engines weak inside. A human named Ethan Cross sat alone, fixing a power core with trembling hands, the last of his kind, or so he believed. He wasn't a soldier or explorer anymore, just a mechanic trying to survive among the stars. He had no idea that powerful eyes were watching him through layers of cosmic surveillance. Suddenly his radar blinked. 3 unidentified ships appeared, sleek, silver, and alive with energy. They weren't pirates. They moved with formation and purpose. "Unknown vessels," Ethan muttered, tapping the console. "Keep your distance," but before he could finish, beams of light struck his ship, disabling his systems. Gravity shifted, alarm screamed. His ship spun helplessly as a tractor beam pulled him in. "No, no, no!" he shouted, pressing controls that no longer worked. The light grew brighter until it swallowed everything. When Ethan opened his eyes, the world around him had changed. He was no longer inside his ship, he was inside a glowing, circular chamber. Walls of living crystal pulsed with soft light, and strange symbols moved like liquid on the floor. 2 tall guards with silver armor stood beside him, their faces hidden behind reflective masks, and behind them, a being stepped forward. Her presence was both terrifying and beautiful. It was Princess Liara. Ethan struggled to speak. "Where am I? Who are you people?" Liara tilted her head, studying him as though he were some fragile miracle. "You are human," she said softly. "Flesh and breath, just as the record said." "I didn't agree to be here," Ethan snapped. "Send me back to my ship." "You have no ship now," one of the guards replied coldly. "You are property of the Zelari throne." Ethan turned toward Liara, anger in his voice. "Property? I'm not some lab specimen." But Liara's expression was unreadable, her eyes deep with both sorrow and curiosity. "We did not bring you for harm, human," she said. "You are here because without you, my people will die." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" Liara turned, her cloak shimmering like liquid metal. "It means our males are sterile, our generations end with me. The royal bloodline will vanish." She paused, then faced him again, her tone quiet but firm. "You will help us restore life." Ethan stepped back, disbelief hitting him. "You can't be serious." "I am," she replied, her gaze steady. "This is the decree of the Zelari crown." Outside the chamber, the news spread faster than light. Some celebrated the return of a mythical human. Others called it a curse. Priests of the old order warned that human genes were dangerous. "They bring war," one shouted. "They bring chaos." Inside, Ethan tried to reason, "Even if what you say is true, I'm not some machine you can use." Liara's voice softened. "I don't wish to use you, but my council does," she said, her expression showing cracks of guilt. "I am bound by duty, but I will not let them hurt you." A moment of silence filled the air between them. Ethan could sense her inner conflict. She was torn between power and compassion, between saving her race and respecting his humanity. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Out of all the beings in the stars, why bring a human?" "Because you are the last of those who created life, not destroyed it," she said. "And our people forgot how to be kind." Her words struck something inside Ethan, a memory of Earth, the green forests, the blue oceans, the laughter that once filled human cities, all gone. And now a dying alien world was reaching for that same lost spark. As he stood in silence, one of the guards spoke sharply. "The council will meet at dawn. The decree must be fulfilled." Liara looked at Ethan one last time, her eyes reflecting pain. "Rest, human," she whispered. "Tomorrow decides both our fates." The guards led him away through glowing corridors, his reflection flickering in crystal walls, his mind racing. He didn't know whether to fear these beings or pity them. Outside, twin moons rose above the alien palace, their light falling on the banner of the Zelari Empire, a star breaking apart and being reborn. And somewhere deep within the galaxy, other humans, hidden colonies long forgotten, received a faint distress signal from Ethan's ship before it vanished. The signal carried one line of data that would soon change everything. Human captured. Alien royalty demands contact. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. For the decree that began as desperation had just awakened something far greater. The return of humanity to the galaxy. The next morning the palace glowed with golden light, soft streams of energy flowing through the walls like living veins. Ethan stood at the edge of his chamber, staring through a transparent dome into the endless alien sky. He had not slept. The words of the princess haunted him. "You will help us restore life." Guards entered silently, tall and expressionless. Their silver armor humming with power, one of them spoke. "The princess summons you to the Garden of Light." Ethan followed, still tense but curious, his steps echoing against the smooth crystal floor. The corridors twisted like the inside of a star. Everything shimmered with soft blue light, but behind the beauty was something cold. Control, silence, fear. They led him through massive gates that opened into a glowing garden, unlike anything human eyes had seen. Trees with glass-like leaves, flowers that floated in mid-air, streams of golden mist flowing between them, and in the center stood Princess Liara, her long silver hair catching the light like liquid moonlight. She turned when he arrived, her eyes holding that same mix of strength and sadness. "You are awake," she said softly. "Did you dream?" "I don't dream much anymore," Ethan replied, his voice rough. "Too busy surviving." Liara gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Survival," she murmured. "Our people once spoke of that too. But now we only speak of extinction." Ethan studied her. She looked regal, perfect, untouchable, yet there was a deep exhaustion beneath the grace. "You don't seem like someone who gives up easily," he said. "I can't," she whispered. "If I do, thousands die." She gestured for him to walk with her. They moved through the luminous garden while alien birds, made of light and energy, sang soft melodies. "You must wonder why I brought you here instead of the council chamber," she began. "I'm wondering a lot of things," Ethan said. "Like why your people think I can fix a dying species." Liara's expression grew distant. "Our males were once strong, wise, full of life energy, but something changed centuries ago. Our birth cycles weakened, and the balance of creation began to fade." She looked at him with a sorrow that felt ancient. "Science failed us. Prayers failed us, and so the council looked to myths. Humans," Ethan said quietly. "Yes," she nodded. "The ancient texts spoke of humans, beings of emotion and adaptability, creatures who could create even in chaos. They said your kind carried something no science could replicate." Ethan frowned. "You mean love?" Liara stopped walking, her violet eyes meeting his. "We call it soul light," she said. "It once burned in us too, but time and control extinguished it." He could see tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes, though she quickly turned away, hiding them. "The decree was my command," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Not because I wanted to enslave you, but because the council gave me no choice." Ethan stared at her in silence, the realization hitting him. "You're trapped in this too." Liara nodded slowly. "I am the most powerful being in the Empire, and yet I am nothing more than a prisoner of duty." A sudden chime echoed through the air, the voice of a royal messenger. "Your Highness, the council demands progress. They await your report." Liara closed her eyes, tension flickering across her face. "They will ask if the human has accepted his purpose," she said bitterly. "If not, they will take you by force." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Let them try," he said firmly. "I've been captured before. But I don't break that easy." She looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, something changed in her eyes, not curiosity, not pity. "Respect. You have courage," she said softly. "Even in fear." "Maybe that's what makes us human," he replied quietly. Liara turned away, her voice trembling. You remind me of the old stories my mother used to tell, of a world where creatures loved before they conquered. Ethan stepped closer. Maybe your people just forgot how. She stared at him for a long time, silence stretching between them like the calm before a storm. Then she whispered, "If I could choose, Ethan Cross, I would not make you a subject of decree. I would make you a guest." Before Ethan could respond, the ground beneath them trembled, a deep, mechanical hum rising from the palace below. Alarms flashed through the sky, glowing red lights chasing across the walls. "What's happening?" he asked, looking around. Liara's face turned pale. "The council is sending drones," she said. "They want to take you to the laboratory of continuance." "Laboratory?" Ethan repeated, his gut tightening. "That doesn't sound like a place for guests." "It's not," Liara whispered, her voice trembling. "They mean to test you, to see if human biology still responds." Guards rushed into the garden, their weapons raised. "Princess, the council orders immediate compliance," one shouted. Liara stood tall, her royal authority returning like lightning. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice echoing through the garden. The guards hesitated. No one disobeyed the princess. Ethan could see her hands shaking, but her voice stayed steady. "Tell the council the human is under royal protection." "Protection?" the guard said uncertainly. "Your decree is mine to interpret." Liara cut him off, her tone sharp and powerful. "Leave us." The guards bowed and retreated, the echo of their boots fading down the corridor. Silence returned to the glowing garden. Ethan exhaled slowly. "You just risked everything for me." Liara's eyes softened. "Not for you," she said quietly. "For hope." Ethan looked at her. The royal figure who stood against her entire empire for one lost human. And something in his chest stirred, a strange warmth that defied the cold logic of survival. He took a step closer. "Then maybe there's still time to save your world." Liara looked up at him, her tears finally falling like drops of light. "Maybe," she whispered, "but saving my world may destroy yours." The garden lights dimmed as the twin suns began to set beyond the palace dome. Two figures stood in the fading glow, a human and an alien princess, both prisoners of fate, both daring to change it. And far above, hidden satellites recorded every word, sending them back to the council chamber where shadowed figures watched, their voices low and dangerous. "The princess has turned," one said coldly. "Then we must turn against her." The fate of two species. The next morning, the palace no longer felt alive. It felt like a cage, silent, tense, breathing danger through every hallway. Ethan woke to the sound of distant voices, the metallic hum of drones, the low murmurs of guards outside his door. Something had changed overnight. Something dark. When the door slid open, it wasn't the same guards who entered. These wore black armor and bore the insignia of the High Council. Their leader, a tall alien named Varen, stepped forward, his voice cold. "The princess is confined to her chambers, human." By order of the council, Ethan froze. "Confined? For what?" "For treason," Varen replied simply. "She defied her own decree. Now she will face judgment, and you—" He paused, scanning Ethan like a specimen. "Will complete the decree, with or without her permission." Ethan's fists clenched. "I'm not your lab rat," he growled. But before he could resist, the guards moved fast. A shock collar snapped around his neck, glowing red, energy pulsing through it, pain seared down his spine. His knees buckled. "Comply," Varen said, "or the next pulse ends your heart." They dragged him through endless corridors, past alien servants who turned away in silence, past walls of glass showing the glowing city below, a city that looked perfect from afar. But inside it was built on obedience and fear. They threw him into a large circular chamber filled with strange equipment, floating pods, glowing restraints, and glass tubes filled with shimmering liquid. It looked more like a place of death than science. A scientist approached, her face hidden behind a silver mask. "Prepare Subject 01H, she said coldly. "Inject the stabilizer," Ethan fought, pulling against the energy cuffs that bound his wrists. "Don't you dare touch me," he shouted, but the guards ignored him. A needle-like instrument floated toward him, glowing blue, and just when it touched his skin, everything froze. A deafening boom echoed through the chamber. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and one of the walls exploded inward, a burst of smoke and sparks filling the room. Through the chaos stepped a young alien woman with emerald green eyes and long white hair. "Seren?" One of the princess's chosen daughters, she moved fast, hitting the guard's armor with a small device that released a pulse of blue light. They fell unconscious in seconds. The scientist screamed and fled. Seren ran to Ethan, unlocking his restraints with a magnetic key. "Come on, human," she whispered urgently. "We don't have much time." Ethan stumbled free, confused. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who still believes in her," Seren said, glancing at the ceiling as drones began to swarm. "The princess sent me before they locked her away. She said if they take you here, you won't come out alive." Ethan's mind raced. "Where is she?" "Prison chamber, East Tower," Seren replied. "But the entire palace is sealed. We'll have to move through the underpaths." Together, they ran through the ruined hallways, dodging drones that fired thin beams of light, the energy slicing through the air like lightning. Ethan grabbed a fallen guard's stun weapon, turning it in his hands. "I've used worse," he muttered, firing it back at the drones, the shots hitting with surprising accuracy. Seren glanced at him with disbelief. "You fight well for someone we thought extinct." "Guess myths don't die easy," Ethan said, smirking slightly despite the danger. They slipped into a maintenance tunnel, dark and narrow, walls humming with ancient energy. Seren whispered as they moved. "My mother served the royal bloodline. She told me humans once lived with us, helped us rise from darkness." The council erased it all. Ethan nodded grimly. "Yeah, sounds like something politicians would do." As they crawled through the passage, the tunnel opened into an underground hall, old and forgotten, lined with statues of alien kings and queens, and among them, a sculpture that made Ethan stop. A figure that was clearly human standing beside an alien queen. Hands joined, a symbol of unity. He stared in shock. "You weren't lying," he said softly. Seren looked up at the statue, tears in her eyes. "We were one once, before greed tore us apart." Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Council soldiers had found the tunnel, their lights cutting through the darkness. "They're here," one shouted. Ethan grabbed Seren's hand. "This way," he said, leading her deeper into the catacombs, through steam vents and broken platforms until they reached a sealed metal door. The words etched on it were old but readable. "Royal Archive. Restricted access." Seren pressed her hand to the lock, her skin glowing faintly. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber filled with ancient holograms and tablets. Ethan stepped inside, lights flickering to life around them. Rows of data crystals lined the walls. "What is this place?" he asked. "The truth," Seren said, activating a holographic panel. An old projection came to life. It showed a group of humans and aliens together, working on DNA structures, designing worlds. "Your kind helped birth ours," she said softly. "The council hid it for centuries," Ethan's breath caught. "So that's why the princess wanted a human," he whispered, "not just for survival, but because she found the missing part of your origin." Seren nodded. "She knew this could change everything, that's why the council fears you." Before Ethan could respond, the door behind them exploded open. Soldiers flooded in, weapons raised. "Hands up!" Farron's voice thundered. Seren grabbed a small orb from her belt and threw it. The chamber filled with smoke. Ethan pulled her down behind a pillar, lasers slicing past them. "We can't stay!" Seren shouted. Ethan looked at the glowing console nearby, an idea flashing in his mind. "If I overload this system, it'll wipe their entire archive," he said, "but it'll also draw every ship in orbit right here. Then we'll have one shot to get to her," Seren said. Determination in her eyes. Ethan grinned faintly. "Now you're thinking human." He pressed his palm to the console. Energy crackled through the floor. Lights flickered violently. The holograms began to melt into static. Varen shouted from the smoke, "Stop him!" But it was too late. The system detonated in a burst of white light, knocking everyone off their feet. When the smoke cleared, Ethan and Seren were gone, vanished into the lower tunnels, leaving chaos behind. As the alarm screamed across the palace, Liara looked up from her prison cell, a faint smile on her lips. "He's coming," she whispered as the stars outside began to flicker like they too were waiting for what came next. Beneath the royal palace, in the tunnels of forgotten stone, Ethan and Seren ran through shadows that shimmered with blue mist. The alarms above echoed like thunder, every heartbeat louder than the last. Smoke drifted from their clothes, and the metallic taste of fear clung to the air. "We don't have long," Seren whispered, scanning a flickering map on her wrist device. "The princess is locked in the East Tower, 5 levels above us." Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead. his breath ragged. Then we climb, he said. Because I'm not leaving her there to die for me. They found an old lift shaft. Its metal corroded but still functional. Ethan forced the manual lever, gears grinding to life after centuries of silence. You sure this thing will hold? He asked, stepping inside. Seren gave a nervous smile. No. The lift rattled upward, lights flashing red through the cracks as they rose. They could see flashes of the city outside. The once peaceful capital now filled with patrolling drones and burning lights. The council was preparing for war. When they reached the top, the shaft opened into a long corridor lined with tall crystalline pillars that pulsed with energy. At the far end stood the princess's chamber, guarded by 2 heavy mechs, their energy cores glowing like molten suns. Serene bit her lip. We can't fight those. Ethan crouched behind a pillar, his eyes narrowing. We won't have to, he said. Grabbing a small power module from the wall, he twisted the circuits until sparks jumped out. If I overload this and toss it near their reactors, it should blind them. You can build explosives? Serene asked, shocked. Build, fix, improvise. It's what humans do best, Ethan replied, throwing the module. It exploded with a sharp flash of light and an electromagnetic pulse that dropped both mechs instantly. They sprinted through the smoke and forced open the chamber doors. The sight froze Ethan's breath. Princess Liara knelt inside a glowing containment ring, energy fields wrapped around her wrists and ankles like chains of light. Her head hung low, her silver hair scattered over the floor. She looked weak, pale, but when she lifted her eyes and saw him, her lips parted in disbelief. Ethan, she whispered, her voice trembling. You came back. He rushed forward, deactivating the energy seals with a stolen control band. You didn't think I'd leave you in this palace of nightmares, did you? She tried to stand, her body shaking. You shouldn't have come. Too late for that, he said, helping her up. Come on, we're getting you out. Serene watched the 2 of them, awe in her eyes. The council will hunt you both, she warned. If they find out you escaped, they'll activate the orbital sentinels. Liara leaned weakly against Ethan's shoulder, her breath shallow. Then we must leave before dawn, she said softly. The transport vaults lead to the outer desert, to the sanctuary of winds. The what? Ethan asked. A place my ancestors built and where bloodlines were first joined, she explained. No council can enter there. But before they could move, a deep voice echoed from behind them. You will not make it that far. Varen stood at the entrance, armor scorched from the explosion below, his eyes cold as stone. You've brought shame to your crown, princess, he said, drawing a glowing blade of pure plasma. And you, human, you've brought infection to our purity. Ethan pushed Liara behind him, his grip tightening on the stolen blaster. Funny, he said. Back home we call that evolution. Varen lunged. His movements impossibly fast, Ethan fired. The blast grazed his armor but didn't stop him. The blade swung. Sparks flew as Ethan barely blocked with a metal rod. The impact threw him against the wall, pain searing his arm. Liara screamed, energy pulsing from her palms. A wave of blue light struck Varen, hurling him back through a pillar. The entire chamber trembled. She stood tall now, her power unleashed, her eyes glowing like twin stars. You forget who I am, counselor, she said, her voice echoing through the hall. I am the heir of the Zelari sun, and I will not be your puppet. Varen rose slowly, snarling. Then you are my enemy, he hissed, before vanishing into a burst of teleport light. Ethan gasped. He'll be back, Liara turned to him, her breathing uneven. Then we must be gone before he returns. Seren guided them through a secret passage behind the throne wall, the narrow tunnel glowing with soft purple veins of energy. Liara stumbled, but Ethan caught her. Holding her steady, she looked up at him, their faces inches apart. You risked your life for me, she whispered. Why? Ethan hesitated, his voice low. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a mission. Her gaze softened, a faint smile touched her lips. Then perhaps you understand more about life than my entire council. The passage opened into a balcony overlooking the vast alien city, towers like blades piercing the night sky, ships patrolling in formation, searchlights sweeping across the horizon. They moved onto a small transport skimmer Seren had prepared, its engines humming quietly. Once you reach the desert, she said, follow the pillars of flame. The sanctuary lies beyond them. Liara touched Seren's hand. You've done enough, child, Seren shook her head. Not yet, and the people still believe you betrayed them. But when they see the truth, they'll rise. Before they could reply, a loud explosion ripped through the lower levels. The palace's defense drones had detected the escape route. Bolts of plasma streaked across the night. Lighting up the sky, Ethan steered the skimmer hard. Dodging the beams, "Hold on!" he shouted. The craft shot into the open air. Weaving between towers, Liara clung to him, her silver hair whipping in the wind. Below them, the palace burned, a storm of rebellion beginning to brew. As they soared into the desert, the city lights vanished behind them, replaced by endless dunes glowing faintly under two moons. Silence filled the night once more. Liara leaned against him, exhaustion softening her voice. "You shouldn't have saved me, Ethan," she whispered. "Now the stars themselves will turn against you." He looked at her, determination burning in his eyes. "Then let them," he said quietly. "Because I don't save people for reward. I save them because it's right." For a moment, neither spoke, the skimmer gliding under the silver glow, the air between them thick with unspoken words, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the desert wind carried the whispers of something ancient, the first link between human and alien, a bond long forgotten, now reborn. The princess closed her eyes and let a single tear fall. Not of sorrow, but of hope, for the forbidden bond had been sealed not by decree, but by choice, and far behind them in the burning city, Varen watched from the tower ruins, whispering to his generals, "Activate the purge protocol. The human must not leave this world alive." The chase across the stars had just begun. The desert stretched endlessly under the twin moons, waves of golden dust shimmering like liquid fire. Ethan guided the skimmer low through the dunes, the engine humming softly against the wind. Princess Liara sat beside him, silent, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Her body weakened, but her spirit unbroken. Behind them, the once proud capital of the Zelari Empire burned in the distance. Smoke rising into the sky like black serpents, the rebellion had begun. And though Ethan didn't know it yet, his actions had set the galaxy ablaze. Liara finally spoke, her voice low but steady. "The council has declared me a traitor. They will use the army to crush anyone loyal to the crown." Ethan glanced at her. "And what about the people? They'll follow whoever promises them survival," she said sadly. "Fear is easier to obey than hope." The skimmer's radar beeped, two drones closing fast from behind. "Hold on," Ethan muttered, gripping the controls tighter. The craft swerved sharply as beams of plasma sliced through the air, glowing streaks lighting the desert night. "Can you outrun them?" Liara asked, her tone calm despite the chaos. "Not for long," he said, scanning the dunes ahead. "But I can outthink them." He turned sharply toward a canyon of red rock and dove into its shadow, the narrow wall scraping against the skimmer's wings. The drones followed, firing wildly. Ethan flipped a small switch on the dashboard. A pulse of energy erupted from the rear engines. Sand exploded upward in a cloud of glass and static. The drone's sensors failed instantly. They crashed into the canyon walls in a burst of light. Ethan exhaled. "That should buy us a few minutes." Liara looked at him with quiet admiration. "You fight chaos with chaos," she said softly. "Perhaps that's why humans once thrived." He gave a tired smile. "Maybe, or maybe we're just too stubborn to die." They emerged from the canyon as dawn broke, sunlight spilling over the dunes like molten gold. Far ahead, tall stone pillars jutted from the sand. Glowing faintly with ancient runes, Liara pointed. "There, the Sanctuary of Winds." Ethan steered toward it, but as they approached, he saw movement. Groups of alien figures waiting among the rocks. "Armored and armed company," he muttered, slowing the craft. Liara stood, her royal cloak fluttering in the wind. "They are not soldiers," she said, her eyes softening. "They are the exiled guard, warriors loyal to my mother's line, banished for questioning the council." As they landed, one of the warriors stepped forward, tall and scarred, his skin marked with glowing blue veins. "Princess Liara," he said, kneeling, "the stars whispered of your fall, and of the human who defied the council." Ethan blinked, surprised. "News travels fast here," the warrior smiled faintly. "In times of dying empires, hope moves faster than light." Liara touched his shoulder. "Captain Vorel," she said softly, "your loyalty endures." Vorel rose, looking at Ethan with curiosity. "So it's true. A living human walks among us, just a man who wants to go home," Ethan said dryly. "Then your home may be larger than you think," Vorel replied, motioning for them to follow. "Come. There's something you must see." They entered the sanctuary. a vast underground temple carved into the desert stone, walls covered in glowing patterns of stars, and at its heart stood a colossal statue. Two figures, one human, one Zelari, holding a sphere of light together. Ethan stared in awe. "It's the same symbol I saw in the archives," he whispered. Liara nodded, her voice trembling. "This was where our ancestors joined blood, the first bond between human and Zelari, not born of conquest, but of trust." Vorel stepped forward, pressing his hand against the statue's base. Energy rippled outward, revealing a hidden chamber below. "The sanctuary still breathes," he said, "and it holds something the council wanted buried forever." They descended into the lower chamber. Ancient machines hummed softly, covered in dust yet still alive. In the center stood a large crystalline core pulsing with faint blue light. Ethan approached. "What is this?" Liara answered quietly. "The Genesis core. It contains the original DNA of both our species. Proof that we were once united." Ethan's heart pounded. "If we show this to your people," Vorel interrupted grimly, "the council will destroy it first. They will erase the truth before letting the old unity return." Liara placed her hand on the crystal, her voice calm, but full of resolve. "Then we show them before they strike. We send the truth to every ship. Every colony," Ethan hesitated. "That'll expose our location." "Then so be it," she said, her eyes bright with defiance. "The truth is worth dying for." Ethan looked at her, fragile, fierce, fearless, and something deep inside him shifted. He had come here by accident, but now he belonged to this fight. They worked together to activate the old transmission array, connecting the Genesis core to the communication towers buried beneath the sand. Ethan rewired the circuits, sparks flying. "Signal's ready," he said. "Once I hit this switch, everyone in your empire will see what the council's been hiding." Liara nodded. "Do it." The light from the core intensified, flooding the temple. Holograms of humans and aliens working side by side filled the air. Ancient songs echoed through the system, spreading across the stars, to every planet, every colony, every outpost. In cities across the empire, citizens stopped to watch, their eyes widening as the truth unfolded. Humans were not invaders or myths. They were their forgotten kin, the original builders of life. Rebellion ignited instantly. Banners of the royal crest rose in the streets. Workers turned against the council's soldiers, and across the empire, a single phrase began to echo through comms and airwaves. "The princess lives and the human walks with her." Vorel looked to the sky, smiling for the first time in years. "It begins," he said. But their triumph lasted only moments. The ground shook violently. The council's fleet had located them. Massive ships descending through the atmosphere, their cannons glowing red. Liara turned to Ethan, her eyes fierce. "You've given them truth," she said. "Now give them hope." Ethan grinned despite the chaos. "Hope's kind of our specialty." He slammed the control panel, overloading the sanctuary's shields. Energy barriers rose around the temple as explosions rocked the desert above. Vorel shouted orders to his soldiers. "Defend the core! Protect the princess!" Outside, beams of light clashed against the sand. The first great battle of the uprising had begun. As fire lit the sky, Liara stood beside Ethan, her voice steady. "The empire will fall tonight," she said. "But from its ashes, something new will rise." Ethan took her hand. "Then let's make sure it's something worth rising for." And as the sun broke over the battlefield, human courage and alien power stood side by side. Two souls bound not by blood or decree, but by destiny. The uprising of shadows had become the dawn of unity. The desert burned under the blazing twin suns. Smoke rose like torn ribbons across the sky, and the sanctuary of winds shuddered from the impact of orbital fire. Ethan stood near the communication array, his hands blackened with soot and dust. Every vibration in the ground reminded him that the council's army was closing in. Princess Liara stood beside him, her silver hair tangled, her royal robes torn, yet she looked more like a warrior than a ruler. Her eyes no longer soft, they burned with purpose. "They've surrounded us," she said quietly. "They will destroy the temple and bury the truth." Ethan glanced up. The sky filled with descending warships, black, massive like shadows blotting out the suns. "Then we don't die hiding," he said firmly. "We die showing them what humanity really means." Vorel, his armor cracked and bleeding light from deep wounds, stepped forward. "The shield generators are failing," he said. "We can hold the council's fleet for maybe 20 minutes. 20's all I need," Ethan replied. turning toward the console. If I can link the Genesis core to the old distress beacon, I can push the signal across the stars, not just in your empire, but beyond, Liara frowned. Beyond? Ethan nodded, his voice low. There's a chance. A small one, but I think others might hear it. Others like me. Her eyes widened, realization dawning. You mean, there are more humans? He hesitated, looking at the stars. There were colonies, scattered after Earth fell, hidden in deep space. But I lost contact long ago, he looked back at her, determination in his eyes. If even one of them hears this signal, they'll come. Liara stepped closer, her voice soft but trembling with emotion. Then send it. Ethan Cross. Let the stars remember humanity. Ethan worked fast, reconnecting damaged circuits. The console hissed and sparked, static flooding the air. The Genesis core pulsed brighter, its light reflecting in Liara's eyes. Transmission range extended, the system announced in an ancient human voice. Signal ready. Outside, the ground shook violently as explosions lit the horizon. Council dropships descended like falling meteors. Soldiers poured into the dunes, black armor glinting in the sunlight, energy rifles raised. Vorel barked orders, his warriors forming a perimeter. Hold your line. Protect the princess. Ethan pressed the activation switch. A low hum filled the chamber. Then a deep, powerful pulse surged upward into the sky. A beam of white and gold light cutting through the smoke and reaching into the heavens. Liara shielded her eyes as the beam spread wider, touching distant satellites, and carrying the message across the star. A voice. Ethan's voice, clear and unbroken. This is Ethan Cross, a human, broadcasting from Zelari space. To whoever hears this, the humans you thought were lost still live. And we don't run from extinction, we fight it. There's a world here where truth is dying, and I won't let it die alone. His words traveled across the galaxy, reaching forgotten corners of space where dormant human ships drifted silently through the void. Inside one such ship, deep within the outer colonies, an ancient AI flickered to life, its sensors locking onto the transmission. Human voice detected, it said. Signal confirmed. Coordinates acquired. Moments later, an enormous fleet began to stir, rusted vessels reawakening, reactors reigniting after centuries of sleep, their hulls bearing the insignia of a lost era. United Terran Fleet Command. Back on Zelari Prime, the first plasma blast struck the sanctuary shields. The force sent shockwaves through the desert, sand spiraling into fiery glass. Vorel's soldiers fell one by one, their armor cracked and glowing, but none retreated. Liara stood at the temple's entrance, energy crackling around her hands, her voice fierce. This land belongs to the living, not the fearful. She raised her arms, releasing a wave of blue energy that shattered the front line of council troops. Lightning arcing through the sky, Ethan watched her, his chest tightening. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for freedom, shields down to 10%. Vorel shouted, "We can't hold them much longer." Ethan's console sparked violently. "Just a little more," he gritted out. The signal still broadcasting. Then suddenly, the static changed and the console screen flickered, displaying a symbol that hadn't appeared for centuries, the emblem of the human fleet. Ethan froze, his heart pounding. "No way," he whispered. Liara turned, confusion in her eyes. "What is it?" Ethan smiled for the first time in days. "They heard us," he said softly. "They're coming, high above the planet." A distortion appeared in space. The stars bent and rippled. And then hundreds of ships emerged from hyperspace, sleek and massive, their hulls shining silver and gold, their engines burning bright blue. The first human fleet had arrived. Gasps filled the command channels across the Council's army. Panic spread through their ranks. Unknown vessels detected. Energy readings, human origin. From orbit, the human flagship, Horizon's Spear, sent a message to the planet below. To all Zelari forces, ceasefire immediately. The voice was calm, powerful, unmistakably human. "You are engaging in hostile action against a protected species," the Council commander screamed in disbelief. "Protected? They're myth." But myths had returned, and they came with thunder. The sky erupted as human ships unleashed precision strikes, disabling the Council's warships with blinding bursts of light. The desert battlefield turned golden under the storm. Liara stared upward, tears filling her eyes. "Your people came for you," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. his face lit by the glow of the burning horizon. "No," he said softly, "they came for us." Moments later, human dropships descended, landing near the sanctuary. Soldiers in armored suits stepped out, their helmets marked with the same emblem as Ethan's old uniform. One of them approached, lowering his rifle. "Ethan Cross?" Ethan nodded, stunned. "Yeah," the soldier saluted. "Fleet Command sends its respect, sir." "We picked up your signal. Looks like humanity's got friends again." Behind them, the surviving Zelari rebels emerged from the dunes, lowering their weapons. Watching as the humans and aliens stood side by side under the burning sky, Liara walked toward the human commander, her voice calm but proud. "Your arrival will change everything," the commander smiled beneath his visor. "That's what humans do." The battle ended not with conquest but with unity. The Council's fleet withdrew, their empire collapsing under the weight of its own lies. As the twin suns began to set, Ethan stood beside Liara at the edge of the sanctuary, watching the horizon glow. "You said your people forgot how to be kind," he said. "Maybe now they'll remember." Liara nodded slowly. "Because you reminded them." The wind blew across the dunes, carrying the faint echoes of the battle, but also something new, the sound of rebuilding, the sound of hope for the first time in centuries. The stars no longer belonged to one race or the other. They belonged to both. The humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The twin suns rose slowly over the Zelari desert, painting the sky in colors of gold and silver. The battle smoke had cleared, leaving behind silence, not the silence of death, but the kind that comes before something new begins. The war was over, and for the first time in living memory, the galaxy breathed again. Ethan stood on the balcony of the Sanctuary of Winds, looking out at the horizon where human and Zelari engineers worked side by side, repairing ships, clearing wreckage, and rebuilding cities. Their differences no longer mattered. They were survivors united by truth and blood. Behind him, the great Genesis core pulsed with a soft rhythmic light, now protected and honored as the heart of a new alliance. Humans called it the Beacon of Rebirth, and the Zelari named it the Heart of Two Suns. Both names meant the same thing, hope. Princess Liara walked toward him, no longer dressed in royal silks, but in simple robes woven with silver threads, the symbol of her empire replaced by a new crest, a human hand and a Zelari flame entwined. She carried herself not as a ruler, but as a leader reborn. "You look tired," she said gently. Stopping beside him, Ethan smiled faintly. "Guess ending a galactic war takes more energy than fixing engines." She laughed softly, the sound light and free. "That you did more than end a war, Ethan Cross. You changed what both our people believed about life itself." He turned to her, his expression warm but weary. "I didn't do it alone, Liara. You risked everything for a truth you could have ignored." Liara's gaze turned toward the sky, where human ships floated in peaceful formation above the capital. "I risked it," she said softly, "because I finally understood what it meant to be alive, not just to exist, but to choose who we are." The wind blew gently through her silver hair, and for a moment, Ethan simply looked at her, the once untouchable princess who had become something far greater than her title. She noticed his stare and smiled faintly. "What is it?" He shook his head. "Just thinking how strange the universe is," he said. "I was just a lost mechanic trying to stay alive. Now I'm standing next to a princess who saved a civilization." Liara looked at him with quiet pride. "You saved me first," she whispered, "and sometimes saving one life saves them all." A voice interrupted from behind. Captain Vorel, now wearing a hybrid uniform marked with both human and Zelari symbols, his injuries healed but his eyes still sharp. "The Council remnants have surrendered," he reported. "The fleets have pledged allegiance to the new Concord." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Concord?" Liara nodded. "The new alliance, human and Zelari together," she explained. "No empires, no thrones, only cooperation." Vorel smiled. "You'll be pleased to know the first law passed this morning, the Cross Accord, ensuring no species will ever be enslaved or used for reproduction again." Ethan blinked. "Surprised you named a law after me?" Liara smiled. "It seemed fitting," Vorel bowed slightly. "The council chambers await you both. The first official Concord meeting begins at dawn." Then he turned and left. Leaving them alone again, Liara looked back at Ethan. "You don't have to attend," she said quietly. "You've done enough." Ethan shook his head. "No, I started this. Might as well see it through." Together they walked through the rebuilt palace, its walls no longer polished to perfection, but etched with symbols of unity. Human letters intertwined with alien glyphs everywhere they passed. People bowed not to power but to gratitude. Children of both races played in the courtyards, laughing as they chased tiny drones that drew shapes in the air. One of the children, and with soft blue skin and human brown eyes, waved to them. Liara's eyes softened. "She's one of the first," she said. "A hybrid born from shared DNA, not decree." Ethan knelt to the child's level, smiling. "You've got a big job ahead of you, kid," he said kindly. "Keep this world better than we found it." The girl nodded with a bright grin and ran off into the sunlight. As they entered the grand chamber, the sight took Ethan's breath away. Humans and Zelari sitting side by side around a vast circular table, holographic maps of shared star routes glowing in the air, ambassadors speaking softly in both tongues, the once divided galaxy now beginning to speak as one. Liara took her seat at the head of the chamber, motioning for Ethan to sit beside her. "You don't need a crown to have a voice here," she told him. He sat down reluctantly, feeling dozens of eyes on him. But the moment he spoke, the room quieted. "We all lost something," he said slowly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Home, history, pride, but today, we gained something bigger. We remembered what it means to care, not because we share blood, but because we share the stars." A long silence followed. Then the chamber erupted in applause, not of ceremony but of genuine respect. Later that night, when the meeting ended and the stars shimmered over the rebuilt palace, Ethan and Liara stood on the balcony once more, looking at the horizon where the first hybrid settlements were forming. Liara turned to him, her voice soft. "The galaxy calls you the human of the decree, the one who turned a command into compassion." Ethan chuckled. "Not sure I like the sound of that," she smiled. "Then what would you call yourself?" He thought for a moment, watching the twin suns fade behind the dunes. "Just someone who remembered that kindness is stronger than fear," he said quietly. Liara reached out, taking his hand gently, her touch warm against his rough skin. "And that," she whispered, "is what will keep the stars alive." They stood there together, two beings from different worlds, watching the first fleet of joint human Zelari ships rise into the sky, their engines glowing blue and silver, a promise written in light. Ethan smiled faintly. "You think the galaxy's ready for us?" Liara looked at him, her eyes shining with hope. "No," she said softly, "but we'll teach it." As the ships vanished into the horizon, the wind carried their laughter across the sand, mixing with the hum of reborn engines and the quiet songs of a united world. The decree that once chained life had become the bond that freed it. The dawn of a new age had come, and humanity's warmth burned once more among the stars.